Falcon Blues TV is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Protect your devices for as little as £2 a month. Click on the link in the description to get up to 80% off your yearly subscription.
Good afternoon and welcome to Falcon Blues TV, and I'm delighted to have another away supporter on Falcon Blues TV today, Chris Budd from the My Old Man Said podcast. Chris, how's things? Are you okay?
How are you? Are you good?
Yeah, all sound, mate, all sound. I'm made up that we started this last week with the Fulham fan. We had the Fulhamish podcast on.
Okay, yeah.
I want to try and do this for every game if I can, even if it's just once in the season,
Right.
Or we'll get you in another time and
Yeah.
talk about the result after it, or the home game at Goodison and something like that. But yeah, everything's okay with you?
Very well, yeah. Well, it's probably not quite as good as it would have been about a week ago before everybody started getting injured and we were getting thumped. But everything else is great. Yeah, it's nice to have the footy back.
That's it. Just before we start, though, I'd just like to express a debt of thanks to the Aston Villa fans, and I think it's one of the Villa food banks as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the news, we lost an Evertonian who was working at Bramley Moor, tragically lost his life in an accident. Michael Jones.
Yeah, very sad.
Yeah, it's horrific. But I think football has just completely been bypassed in this, and Aston Villa fans and their food bank and everything else have been absolutely incredible. And I think they've raised over like 20 grand.
Wow.
This young man's family. So from me and for Evertonians, a massive thank you to Villa fans. It just shows us sometimes the football just goes out the window. Rivalries just get put aside. And yeah, an absolute credit to the club and your fans and everything else. So yeah, thank you so much.
We said, didn't we, before we came on air, there's always been a sort of a mutual respect, and the two clubs, they sort of sit in their communities in a very similar way.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's certainly not one of those rivalries that's like a nasty one. I remember when we were getting relegated and we were like protesting about the ownership and stuff, and the Everton fans were like, yeah, give us a load of flyers, we'll hand them out in the away end and we'll sing along with you and stuff. There's never been like a nastiness between the fans, and with things like this, rivalries and football go out the window. And I know you guys up there have always been quite good with community stuff anyway. So
yeah,
any little that people can do in this scenario.
That's it, mate. It's a tough time for. I mean, I know a lot of the fans knew Michael quite well as well, right, from going on the away coaches and things like that, and the lads at the Falcon also knew him. So just to see that there's other clubs showing this kind of care and this kind of heart it's amazing in this day and age. So again, as I say, thank you from all of us at Everton. It's so much appreciated.
All good
stuff. But moving on to the football now. Neither of us had the best week. Probably yours a little bit less than us. But what were your thoughts after the game at Newcastle? Were you thinking, are we back to normal? Are we going to be, because it wasn't a bad game for Everton. I think we probably could have won it, but it was just a game for Villa that you probably want to forget.
Pretty much. I mean, I sort of saw the highlights of the Everton one. I got the feeling that you were just very wasteful in front of goal. On another day, you're probably 2-3 up at half time and it's a nice, easy afternoon. But that was kind of the theme of last season for you, wasn't it, really? Where it was, if Calvert-Lewin didn't play, you didn't have anyone to put the ball in the back of the net. In terms of Villa at Newcastle, it's one of those ones I suppose you'd rather get it out the way first weekend and get that performance. As potentially as a bit of a wake-up call. I think the game this weekend probably doesn't come at a good time for you lot, because I think Emery will have them pretty switched on for this week. You'll get the response. The big one really for me, and I'm sure most Villa fans, wasn't so much the result or even the performance. The fact that in the space of 3 or 4 days, you've had Emi Buendia and Tyrone Mings' seasons basically ended by ACL injuries. Yeah. And therefore, the sort of the ownership and the hierarchy have now got to go and move pretty quickly in the market to replace them, because the reality is they're probably not going to kick a ball this season.
No,
which is a big knock for us, obviously, when you factor in having to play in Europe as well.
It wasn't just like the 2 ACL injuries for Mings. There was ACL injuries all over the place.
Yeah, well, I've seen some in Europe as well. And I saw Courtois at Madrid got one. Obviously, De Bruyne at City's got a bad hamstring one. Mm-hmm. Was it Timber at Arsenal? Was it as well?
Timber at Arsenal, yeah.
There's been a few injuries, which makes me think that Yeah, it makes me wonder if a lot of clubs have pushed the players really hard in pre-season and they're just a little bit overcooked slightly, shall we say?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I did my ACL around this time last year, and I've not been the same since. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, so it doesn't really matter to me whether I'm going to be playing competitive football.
You're not a finely tuned athlete then anymore.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're not in the cryo chambers every day and doing oxygen.
No, there's no oxygen tanks here. No oxygen tents in ours. Not a chance. I run after kids in my house. I've got my two daughters who I'm running around after, and I'm hobbling around the house now.
Oh no!
But we've got to be honest. An ACL injury is it's the worst, isn't it? I mean, it's your life just goes whoa. You know what I mean? I know probably if you do it and you play footy like me and you don't play it as often, you go, am I going to be able to just walk? Do you know what I mean? I know they've got the best specialists and they've got the best physios and stuff like that. But when you come into an age like when you're in like your 20, late 20s, late 30s and stuff like that, you start wondering like, oh Christ, is this going to be the end of it for me? And you've got to worry about Mings, whether, it's a big injury. And for a centre half to get an injury like that, you lose that little bit of yard of pace as well. So you've got to be prepared for what happens beyond your rehabilitation and stuff like that. Yeah. So,
well, he did it years ago as well. If you remember when he was at Bournemouth, he did it. So it's not the first time. And I don't know if it was the same knee or not. I'm not sure. But you do wonder. And even it's one of those weird things. We discussed it after the game on Sunday that sometimes in a season you get these weird sort of quirks of fate, don't you? Where something really bad happens, but it forces you into making a sort of a sideward step, and it actually works out for the best long term. Yeah. Luckily, we had sort of Pau Torres sat on the bench, who was kind of the big signing of the summer, who I would have thought they would have wanted to sort of drip feed in. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, you've got to become the main man pretty quickly. But that would have been the plan long term anyway, I'm sure. So, there's some who may have thought that by the end of the season, Mings may have lost his place to Torres anyway. I didn't think that personally, but the fact that we've got competition for places, we've probably got about 5 or 6 centre backs at the club, so we're fairly well stocked. But he's the big one, I think, compared to Buendia, where we've got other attacking options. It's just the fact that you've lost Buendia and you've lost Ramsey at the same time. We've got Moreno out, so we've got a lot of injuries at the moment.
Yeah, I was just looking.
Not the best way to start the season.
I was just reading online before, looking at about 13 players out.
Yeah, I mean the side that lost.
Sorry to put a number on it there.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, put it this way: the team that demolished Newcastle 3-0 in April at Villa Park, 5 of them were injured, and then a 6th when you factor in Mings. That and obviously Ashley Young obviously would have played and is now on the other side of the divide this weekend. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes you get these runs, and if anything, I'd rather get it out the way now, early in the season. Because once we get Moreno back, Ramsey back with the new faces, we're still a very good side on paper. But it's potentially not the best of times for you to play us, but on another sense, it's probably not the worst either.
Yeah, exactly. Well, speaking of Ashley Young, then what are your thoughts on it? Because now I'm like Luke Dean is now back in the side, and it wasn't really
for now.
For now. But I was when Young was coming to Everton, it was like, really, we're bringing in Ashley Young, and you had to take a step back and you go, well, he actually played the latter part of last season and was part of that team that was integral in getting you up the league.
Yeah,
so losing Ashley Young now. What are your thoughts on it? I assume Ashley Young to Villa fans is a bit of a cult hero.
Yeah, absolutely. Normally you'd always say, don't go back. When he came back, when the first time he sort of came back, you thought, well, okay, maybe is it worthwhile? And the first season he was here, you didn't really see what it was about anymore. Last season, even under Gerrard, to be fair, when we were an absolute train wreck under Steven Gerrard, he was probably one of the few bright sparks. He was probably one of our best players because, when things are going wrong, you want those experienced sort of calm heads. And I think even just having him around the squad is good, be it as a mentor for the younger players or sort of I kept calling him like a conduit between the players and the staff, because he's at that age where he's probably going to be doing his coaching badges and thinking about what next. He's still a brilliant professional, and in terms of his fitness and in sort of the physical side of his game, he's still got it. Has he lost a yard of pace? Yes, but he probably makes up for it being wily and clever, and his positional play is good. I think for where Everton are right now, with respect, he's probably the right kind of player to have around. Yeah, when things are going wrong, he'll just be calm. He'll slot straight in. He knows about the league. I still think he lives kind of in the Northwest anyway, so it's not a big uproot of his life. I think he'll just slot in and be a really good professional for you. You don't have to worry about him compared to, so many of the sort of the big money signings that you've made in the last few years. You've just tanked. Young, I think you'll be like, oh, actually, I'm really pleasantly surprised, as Villa fans were. He was such a calming influence, and he's so versatile as well. You can play him anywhere on the right hand side. You can play him in central midfield. You can play him at left or right back. It was a strange one when Villa let him go for me. It suggested that you're only going to let him go if you're bringing in someone better, or you're going to change the way you play slightly. But I still wonder. A few Villa fans were sort of scratching their heads going, if you haven't gone and bought a replacement or an upgrade, because everybody understood, if you're going to go out and buy sort of a 30, 40 million pound fullback, fair enough. You're not going to build a long-term project with a sort of 37, 38-year-old at fullback.
Of course.
But he'll get a great reception if he if he plays, or if he comes off the bench or whatever on Sunday. He'll because he didn't get the sort of the farewell that he would have wanted, and the fans felt he deserved. The fans were a little bit sort of miffed at that, to be honest.
Yeah, you've just been let go, and that's it.
A little bit, yeah. It was kind of he just slipped out the back door, which was a kind of a strange move, but Emery would have had his reasons.
I agree on what you're saying about the professionalism and his attitude and things like that. And one of the players that springs to mind when you talk about that is another ex-Villa, Gareth Barry.
Massively so, yeah. Similar kind of personality.
Yeah, we were both very late into his career. I think we picked him up when he was 32, 33.
Yeah.
And we look at that Everton side, we probably haven't really replaced Gareth Barry. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of
a long time too. We never really did. Yeah, those kind of players, they're really sort of unfashionable, aren't they? Because they're not sort of like silky. They're not like a Grealish or a De Bruyne or all those kind of guys. They do all the dirty stuff. They keep it really simple and they can run the game for you. But you take them out of your team, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, you see the gaping hole.
Yeah, it's the player that you sort of say you don't want him in your side, but other teams don't want him, but then when he's in your side, you see the difference that they make.
Yeah, they're just solid.
Kind of thing, just solid.
And it's the consistency thing of, like wingers can tend to be quite erratic because that's just the way the game goes. But he's just a solid central midfield player. When he stepped up at Villa from being a sort of a left back or a left-sided centre half to being in midfield, it just transformed his game. He became like such an integral cog in those Martin O'Neill era teams. And even when he went to Man City for a few years, he was quite an important player under sort of the early days of Mancini. And then obviously City went through the gears, and all of a sudden they were going out and buying these global superstars. And again, Gareth Barry wasn't going to fit into the way they played, but he'll go down as a real, certainly in the last sort of 10, 15 years, as one of the best players to come out of Villa.
Definitely. So looking at the games the game on Sunday. Everton haven't won against Villa since 2016 when we won 3-1 at Villa Park. So
basically we're unbeaten since we've been promoted back to the Premier League.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Which is mad. It's just mad, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, I mean, especially the way. I mean, I look back at that 2016 season. I think that was probably around Koeman, probably Martinez's side.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a team that's had Lukaku. It's going to be. It's going to be that Gareth Barry side, I suppose, as well. It's going to have been that.
As we were getting relegated.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, and then we were pushing for 7th, 6th, and European spots and things like that, and then the wheels came off beyond that, and then it's all been downhill since. But looking at your injuries, looking at how Everton were last week, and how do you see the game going this Sunday?
I think Villa know they need a response just to calm everyone down. They had a bad week. I think the Buendia injury rocked them in terms of their preparations because he would have played. The Mings one in-game rocked them. But actually before that, we played some really good football and sort of took the game to Newcastle. So I think he'll obviously have a fresh plan in place. I'd expect Torres to come in. I'm interested to see if Bailey plays or if he shuffles the pack slightly, maybe puts Tielemans in and moves McGinn into a more advanced role. I'm not quite sure yet how they'll do that without Buendia and Ramsey. The new lad who we expect to sort of sign at any point today, Zaniolo, I wouldn't have thought he'll be involved if indeed that deal goes through. I'd imagine we'll be positive. I would imagine if it's a Sean Dyche team, he'll try and be as organised as possible, keep it tight, hit on the break. I would have normally sort of looked forward to a Calvert-Lewin versus Mings battle. I always think that would be quite a good sort of, a physical one. They go toe to toe with each other. If they're both not playing, because I think Calvert-Lewin's injured, isn't he, at the moment again?
He played.
Or is he back now?
He's back, but it's sort of like a weird rehabilitation thing with Calvert-Lewin. I think we're taking it one game at a time. He played in a behind closed doors game on Tuesday, I think it was, against Man United. Okay. We lost, but that's
so he might be involved.
Certainly feature, yeah. I mean, I'd sooner see him have 60 minutes at least, and then bring on Neil Maupay, or at least or Lewis Dobbin. Just give it, because for all the running that Maupay did on Saturday, it wasn't good enough. The two chances that he had, he squandered the second chance. He just hit it straight at the keeper, but the one that he flashed just wide of the post early on, you thought, oh, okay, something might just happen here. But I think I think he's going to be surplus to requirements soon. I think we've got the new lad Chimiti that we brought in from Lisbon. Whether he features in any way, I don't know. I think he's probably end up going to go and start with Maupay, because I don't think he's probably going to say, rather doing the press conference now at 1:30, he'll probably say that Calvert-Lewin's not fit and not ready to play. And there'll be murder on social media over it, because everyone will just start kicking off. It's like, well, why haven't we bought a bloody striker and all this, that, and the other?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about strikers. We're linked with Shea Adams from Southampton, and I think if we can get that one over the line, I think I'd be a bit more confident and a bit more reassured that I've got. He's not the best striker in the world, but he will give you 10 or 15 goals and goal chances during that period.
Yeah.
That Neil Maupay isn't giving you, and the forward line isn't giving us. So I think we'll go very, very organised. I think, we'll have Tarkowski in the back, you'll have Onana, Garner, maybe James Harden in that midfield. And I think it's all about us now taking our chances. We've got to make the chances, and we've got to put it away. And like you say, you've got to put it right. I think Everton have got to put it right after last Saturday as well.
Yeah, having been wasteful. I mean, on another day, Villa going sort of 2-2 at half time, or we claw on back in the second half, and you're right back in the game. But we were just defensively, I think most teams would have looked at that with Villa, with that playing a high line, and gone, all right, okay, we know we're in business here. We know we're going to get a chance.
Yeah.
It's just I'd expect Villa to have a lot of the ball, but that doesn't always mean anything. You can have all the possession you want, and if the opposition go up the other end and nick a goal, then great. I expect Dyche would sort of be playing for that. They'll play to hit on the break. We'll have a lot of the ball. We'll be positive. We've certainly through pre-season, our interplay in the final third has been phenomenal. We look really, really tasty around the penalty area at the moment. They look really sharp. Admittedly, a lot of that was Buendia. Strangely, Coutinho's back semi-fit and sort of had a couple of good pre-season run-outs, so we'll see if he features. The new lad Diaby looks a live wire. So whoever's playing fullback is going to have a difficult afternoon. He's quick and he's very direct. I'm confident, but you just never know in these games.
I think the way we're talking, I think we both settle for a draw right now and just.
I mean, I wouldn't. We have to win the game. We're under pressure that we are expected to win this one. I agree with you. I think actually a draw for Everton's probably a good result, especially with the way your record on the road was last year. Yeah. Villa have to win this one, to be honest. They will be expected, especially with obviously the Hibs game to come in Europe in the week after.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
They need to kind of kickstart the season really as soon as possible, and kind of just sort of show themselves, the fans and the wider football world, that the Newcastle game was a bit of a one-off. Otherwise, everyone will be sort of not panicking, but there'll be a few questions being asked of Emery and the players.
Yeah, I think though with Newcastle, it's a bit of a weird one. I think if they start breezing past teams, then you can look at least if you get something on Sunday, or there's a decent result, we come away with a draw or whatever, a point each. You can probably look back at that and go, well, if they're going to start breezing past teams, you can look at it with a little. Yeah, it's probably not going to be as bad as we thought, actually. But
I thought that sort of, in terms of like last season and probably what will come this season, there'll be better teams than us will go there and get 2 or 3 put past them. Yeah,
exactly. And that happened last season as well. When you did City and stuff like that,
or even games like when towards the end of the season when you guys went to Brighton and absolutely demolished them, and nobody saw that coming, and you just thought
anything can happen.
What on earth happened? What on earth happened there?
I think performance has or something.
But it's like you can get these kind of weird and wacky results, especially on opening day. It just so happened that we were the kind of the quirky result that no one saw coming, but we'll see. No one knows yet. That's the thing. Early in the season, no one quite knows what Villa or Everton team will turn up.
That's it. I think it's just going to be wait and see where it all falls. But
is the expectation of Everton to be better than last season, or is it very much you're on a level, you may be a slightly different team, or is there an expectation that, well, you look behind you and see definitely 3 worse teams this year and you should be not quite so in trouble that you were last year?
I don't know, because I think we looked at that last season and thought exactly the same.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's a weird one, because you could go, okay, well, there was 3 teams worse than us, but we were playing just as bad as them.
Right. Okay.
And the teams there, we probably got Southampton, and whoever, we're probably all looking at it going, well, we could easily leapfrog Everton here, because we just weren't picking up the results. And I think last Saturday was just one of those games where I thought that's in our wheelhouse. We could have easily won that.
Yeah. That's where you've been at for a while, isn't it? You can play a team like Fulham, and then another day you'll play Arsenal and beat them.
That's it. I mean, like you said, you just could have come out. You just could have come out at 2-2 at half time. There, we could have been 2-0 up, home and home,
and should have been as well, really.
But I think it's all about taking the chances. But yeah, I think this season there is, thankfully, hopefully, 3 teams worse than us. But I think anything 14th, 15th finish is progress, and it's stability. It's keeping us in the league. It's keeping us where we need to be for when we move into the new stadium and things like that.
Yeah, is that the focal point now?
I think so.
It's kind of, you almost like this season is just like you tread water for a year, get in the new stadium, and then see where you are moving forward.
Yeah, because I think we're not putting money into the stadium then, and then the money starts getting generated from the stadium. And then money goes back into the team, back into the club, and things like that. I think that's always been the plan, like from maybe 2018 when it all got announced, and then we've been building it for like the last 2-3 years now. That it's like, well, we know it's because we're trying to move into Bramley more. Obviously, the war in Ukraine and everything else hasn't helped with our financial records and stuff like that, and financial fair play give us a bit of a kick. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's always been the goal. The end game is to be in the stadium in the Premier League. So, like I said, the 14th, 15th position finish would be perfect for Everton, I think, at the moment. And then you build on it once we're in the new stadium, which would be halfway through 25-26 season, I think. So, I think we'll just have to wait and see. But I'll finish this up then, Chris, because
no worries.
I'll let you go. But thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to Falcon Blues TV. If you want to catch up with Chris on My Old Man Said podcast, you find it on Spotify.
All the usual, Apple Podcasts and all that, and then obviously on Twitter at My Old Man Said.
Good stuff. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Chris.
Pleasure.
Colin Chong. See you in a bit.